So another Saturday. This has become like such a tradition in this community, and I'm so excited to be here in another Saturday. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're seeing this, where you're watching. If you're watching a replay, then welcome. I am so excited that you're here listening to us. Talking about something that is so important, that is intermediate courses. So if you're listening to us, if you can hear us fine, please let us know in the chat. Tell us where you are. I would love to hear where you are, and also tell us if you're finished, because I am. Yeah! I did it. So again, if you're new in this community, my name is Claudia Elliott. I'm a Spanish teacher in Jacksonville, Florida. I am from Colombia, and I have been teaching Spanish for 14 years. I have taught all the levels, and this past year, next year, I'm going to be teaching my same 3 classes, which is Spanish 1, Spanish 3 IB, and AP. So I'm gonna just let Berta introduce herself. She is like like my great collaborator, my great friend, and I want her to introduce herself to you.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here again at this beautiful group. I also well, Claudia already knows, I'm done with school as well. My last day was last week. And with the students, it was 2 weeks ago. So this past week was my first week in vacation, but I haven't really had any time to do anything vacation related, but that is okay. I'm still doing what I love to do. And I also know what I'm going to be teaching next semester. So normally I teach Spanish 2, 3, and AP Spanish. And next year, I'm going to be teaching Spanish 2, Spanish 3, and AP Spanish. For the past, I want to say 4 years, I've been teaching Spanish 3 and a lot of Spanish 3. And then for the past 2 years, I've been teaching, like I said, Spanish 2, 3, and AP. And during my first years of teaching high school, 5 years ago, I mainly taught Spanish 1, so I know that curriculum very well as well. But yes, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm really glad that you have decided to join us as Claudia and I discuss challenges and successes in our intermediate courses, and we are so happy to be able to share this with you today.
I am super excited about this. This is something that I have. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Madeleine. I am just super excited to be here today because this is something that is really close to my heart. I have grown so much. I think my intermediate classes is where my practice have changed the most in the last 5 years, when I'm really understanding my intermediate learners. So I've been talking to Berta for many months and now about intermediate classes. And we wanted to put this together for you, and we wanted to bring this discussion. And I applaud you to be here on a Saturday on May, like, right?
Right. I mean, even after your school year is done for some of you.
I know, like, your students are so lucky to have you. So bonjour. And hi, Dee. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited that you're here. So let's talk about first, why are we here? So, every time that we go to our level 2, 3, 4, and AP classes, we all have this image in our head. We look at our books and we're ready to have this deep conversation with our students. We feel like, finally we will be able to really keep our classes in L2. Finally, we will really use those authentic resources that we're just, really wanted to use in the class, and having these topics that are super meaningful for the students. And we're super excited. Just level 2, 3, 4, and AP, we just feel so empowered to do so much with the language because we feel like this is upper levels, especially, level 2 kind of, but level 3, like, oh my gosh, I just cannot wait to have the Socratic seminar with my students, to have debates with my students, to use these resources. And we are planning our summer for that. And we just cannot wait to get there. But then our reality check.
Yep. Then it so happens that you close the door of your classroom and, first day, first week, we are hit with a new reality. And what happens with that reality? Well, that all of our students are at different levels of proficiency. And we have to serve the students as we must. But at a level 3, we might have a novice mid student.
Mm-hmm.
It is
what about
Serena.
your AP?
At AP, we might have an intermediate low novice high student. I know I had some this year. I had 3 students who were placed in that class without requesting it, but I'm not going to kick them out. I have to do what I have to do to serve those students. So, but if we are concerned about those realities, it is a very valid concern because there are questions that are going to be going through our head. For example, how is the student in this class? How can I get him or her to pass the end of the year course test, the AP exam? How am I going to be able to teach all of this advanced curriculum to all the students, but this a couple of students who are in the lower level, how am I going to reach them? How am I going to make the language comprehensible to them? How am I going to stay on the target language 90% of the time? If I have heritage speakers in my classes, and if I have super high flyers, how am I going to keep those from checking out while I reach the lower levels?
It is really a reality check. Like when you go to that level and you want to really meet older kids, but you see they're everywhere. They are everywhere. And you are like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So we have these high expectations. We have these dreams. We look at our book, and our books bring so many great resources, so many great topics. We're just ready for them. And then here they are. And it's super stressful. But the truth is, like Berta said, I have an AP class this year, and I have like 4 kids that were very, very weak, intermediate low. They wanted to be there. They really wanted to be there. And I'm all about opening my classes to everybody that wants to be there. So that is the reality check. That is happening to you. That has happened to me. That has happened to Berta. The fact is, all intermediate level classes are going to have those challenges.
Big gaps, yes. And we are here to kind of troubleshoot how we have overcome those challenges and what have we been doing that has helped us to successfully reach those students and get them to move up.
And we really want to tell you that there is a magic pill, right? Like, I love the magic pill. I live with my parents, and they watch a lot of TV, and they have all these magic solutions for the pains because they're they're old. So it's like, take this pill and your pain is going to disappear. And of course, we know that those magic pills don't exist. So we wish we can give you a magic pill to really just all these challenges disappear and have all your students at one level, which is the right level for you to start having those conversations and using those resources. But of course, we know that magic pill doesn't exist. So what can we do? Is there anything that we can do? We believe that there is. We have worked really hard in our intermediate courses, and we feel like it has been making so many progress to be open to every student and yet see so much growth. So today, we're going to share with you three of the biggest challenges that we all face in the intermediate class. And I would love to hear from you. Please just type in the comments while Berta is talking. I'm going to be checking on the comments, and we're going to stop and talk a little bit about your concerns right then, because this is like a big thing. Like, we have the three main challenges, and then we're going to share with you our three most impactful tips, how we, Berta and I, are working to try to overcome those challenges. So let's start with the number one, with the big one, with the one that we all face.
Okay, so we have our first challenge in our intermediate classes. And yes, we're only talking about three today, but there are more than three, but we're focusing on these three because these three are the most important. And if you can conquer these three challenges, honestly, you're going to you're going to be able to reach those students a lot better just by these three challenges alone. So challenge number one, as we mentioned earlier, is that our kids are at very different levels. That is honestly the main thing that we need to really grasp. What does it mean that they are at different level? It doesn't mean that we're going to look at the kid, at the student, and be like, and ask and say, why are you here? Or go talk to our admin and say, can this child be placed out of my room?
Mm-hmm.
These are the cards we're being given, and these are the cards that been given to us. So now we have to honestly just make it happen for them. So that is our first challenge, and yes, it makes our heads spin, and we might think there's nothing we can do about it, but the reality is that in all levels we're going to have big gaps, but those become more pronounced at level 2, level 3, level 4, and AP levels. And as we continue to reach these children, if we give them a lot more content and we're not doing anything to reach them, the gap is only going to get bigger. So we must come up with a solution.
And I think that you are right on point, Berta, because I think what you just said, if we cannot meet all our students in that level 2 and in that level 3, the gap is going to be bigger. And one of that has been like my goal for the last 5 years, is working on meeting everyone in my student. I want my class to be open and accessible, and I want to provide equity to my students, and I want to do it, and the only way that I can do it is to meet them all at their level.
Yes.
So I think when we talk about that, Berta and I were talking about like, okay, so let's see what is the level. So what is the level that they should be, and what is this such a big challenge for us? And sometimes I wonder if the challenge is coming not from the student or from us, from the textbooks that we use to teach those classes. So let's look at this actual performance descriptor, where they tell us where the students are going to be. And if you can tell us a little bit about this, Berta, and what are your thoughts about this chart?
Well, if we look at ACTFL, which are our guidelines, and the guidelines a lot of textbooks use or are supposed to be using, and the guidelines that we are abiding by in your classroom, if your students don't receive any language in middle school, that means that they come to 9th grade and they know nothing, or they never taken language courses. If you look at the second line, well, let's look at the first line, 9th through 10th grade. That's usually the time the students are taking Spanish 1, correct? And Spanish 2.
Yes.
So this tells us that by the time they leave maybe Spanish 2, they're going to be approaching the intermediate low range.
That is interesting. And what that is very interesting, because look at our level 2 textbooks. And I don't have anything against, I'm hoping that nobody's here a publisher from a textbook. I don't know all of them, but I'm going to tell you from what I've seen. What I've seen is our textbooks sometimes are dictating what our expectations should be in our classes. And I think that has been damaging to me, to my students, to my relationship with them, and for me to really help them grow. Because when I open that textbook and they open that first chapter of the textbook, we are already in a really shaky place because they're not there. They are not there. And what is
Absolutely.
expected. I mean, like if you look at, have you seen those pages at the end of each chapter with the vocab and the grammar? And like, if we expect our kids to really master all that in 1 year, it is just not real and it's not even possible. So I feel like those textbooks are, I don't know, like I always wonder what is this, like level 2. Let's talk about level 2. And if you talk about level 2, just please share what are the
We
grammar aspects.
absolutely, we wonder, mainly, I just want to point this out. I've heard several teachers say this, and I totally understand where the question is coming from. I heard people across programs always wonder, why do we not have enough numbers for a level 3? Why do our students check out of Spanish 2? If you look at the usual textbooks, Spanish 2, and if we teach by the textbook, Spanish 2 is loaded with a ton. It's probably one of the heaviest grammatical courses, but it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be. So if we look at the second line over here, 9th through 12th grade, we can see that maybe by the time they're done with Spanish 3, they're going to be somewhere in the intermediate, low, intermediate, mid range. But it doesn't say, actual doesn't tell us. They have to be able to use the preterite, the imperfect, and, the past perfect, and all the perfect tenses and the subjunctive. It doesn't tell us that. It tells us that they have to be able to function in different time frames to be more on the advanced level.
And I think you just, before, I want to like interrupt you because I think you made a huge, very important point that is going to link to our tip. And the point that Berta is making is those are the proficiency level that some of the students are going to be able to accomplish by the end of the year, not by the beginning. And I think that is just, I mean, only that thought, it gives you so much information.
For me, because we do have a question, it says in here, how many years does it take to get to that level, intermediate? Well, for me, my students who come to me for Spanish 2, by the end of the course, I need to lead them to intermediate low. And for Spanish 3, I need to lead them to intermediate mid.
I love the word that you use, Berta, lead them. Right? You can lead them. You can guide them to that. But the reality is, I mean, I don't know if you have kids. I have 2 kids. I have 2 kids that I raised, that I read books to both of them, and I talk to them in Spanish, and my husband talked to them in English. I have 2 boys. Both of them start talking at so different times. One was an early talker, and the other one was a late talker. Why? You wonder. So that is very important because we have very, very personal differences that we need to recognize. I mean, we cannot just put them in a box and say, okay, everybody's going to be using this at May or in February or in December. And that's why these ranges are like this. And then some of them are really great at reading, and some of them are really great at talking. And then when the writing part comes here, so that understanding gives us so much information. So when we are assessing students, when we're designing activities for our students, we can recognize that. And I love the word that Berta used, lead them. So I agree with you. By the end by the end of level 2, we need to lead them to intermediate low. Now, that means that everybody's going to be intermediate low? No. That means that if they're not in intermediate low, they cannot go to level 3? No, they can. I mean, like, they really can move up if we meet them. So I agree with you. At the end of level 2 should lead them to intermediate low. At the end of level 3 should lead them to intermediate mid.
Now, that doesn't mean that if you have super high achieving students, you are going to leave them stuck at intermediate low if they're ready to go further in your Spanish 2 course.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
we are leading them. Yeah, that is the goal for the class, and they need to be aware of what the goal of the class is. But as teachers, there are things we can do to tweak and reach whoever is not moving towards intermediate low, because there might be a student that the goal in Spanish 2 is not going to be intermediate low. It might be novice high because they're actually novice mid. Or
Mm-hmm.
but maybe a child, I have several of those that go beyond intermediate low in Spanish 2, and and they begin to show skills from intermediate mid learners.
And I love the comment that Tracy is making right now that says, I try to focus on core practices and make it input comprehensible. And I think that that's so important, Tracy, what you just said, because I believe that that is at the core. And I love, since I became a CI, I mean, like I have a CI approach in my practice, this process have become so much easier for me, because I'm gonna have to confess here, because like we're here, we're friends, so I have to confess. In level 3, 6 years ago, I taught it all: present subjunctive, imperfect subjunctive, present perfect subjunctive, direct object pronoun, double pronoun, future perfect tense. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that future perfect tense existed. Yes, it does. It really is great. I love grammar. I mean, I love to like understand and read it. And we just practice. I remember that I have a tool, online, that I'm not going to say the name, where I send all my students and like, let's practice and let's conjugate this verse and let's do it and let's do it. And I had great kids. I mean, like, I don't know why they love me. I don't know. Like, I don't know, because their poor eyes were like spinning. I was like, why? We have repeated this so much times. We're done. And I went back to my acronym for the subjunctive and conjugate and conjugate and conjugate. Let's do it. And at the end, they couldn't. And there were like this group of kids that couldn't. And I just thought like, oh, let me see if I can find another song. Let me see if I can find another visual. But I was so focused on that textbook that the only way for me to cure me from my disease of having to teach all the grammar was to abandon and ditch my textbook. It doesn't mean that you have to do it.
Claudia, we have a couple comments that I would like for us to address. If you could go to Nicole Alberico Far's comments.
Yes.
Okay, so she says native speakers and professionals, even though ACFO doesn't mandate that students use specific tenses, which tenses do you expect graduates to have decent control of? All or some of the subjects? Uses of subjunctive. Okay, I'm going to be very honest with you. In the AP exam and in the AP exam, students, it's nice to have students use the subjunctive mode, but that doesn't mean that we're going to have a huge lesson and spend months on using it with specific clauses, using it with the exception to the rule, and you know how we break it down. The book breaks it down. Like Tracy mentioned earlier, we're going to use actual core practices, and we're going to embed the subjunctive in maybe the theme that we're covering. Maybe we are talking about, an ideal and what we could do to have more ideal city, and then we can come up with solutions, and we can integrate the subjunctive in a topic that is compelling to the student, so we can deliver compelling comprehensible input, which is also one of ACFO's core practices. And we can also take time to teach some grammar implicitly and explicitly a little bit. That we're not saying, oh, absolutely not, but definitely we don't need to take them through all, because ultimately we want them to communicate. So if they can communicate using the subjunctive naturally because of the input that we are giving them and the types of tasks we're giving them in the classroom to be able to produce output, they can have some mastery of the subjunctive. Are they going to know all the rules? No. they're probably not going to know the rules, but that's not going to hinder their communication. Because if we look at our guidelines, and I don't think I have that book right here next to me right now, but if we look at our guidelines, and the proficiency ranges, if we look at that, our advanced learners are still making some mistakes. Advanced low still making some mistakes. They're using different time frames, but they're making some mistakes. So
tell me about it.
So yes, by the time they're done with AP and level 3, sure, I'm saying we can embed. I'm not saying don't embed the subjunctive. I'm not telling anybody. We're not telling people to not teach a prayer, to not teach imperfect, but embed it in your content, embed it in your themes through using input that is comprehensible to the students and that it's compelling, so that they can naturally obtain the language. There's one more question, two more questions that I want to address.
Let me go to that comment again, and I want to share a story. I love to share stories, but I want you to that happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It was my first year teaching AP, and I was super excited because, again, I love grammar. So I wanted to really, really go over my grammar. And I had a kid. Her name was Simone. And Simone was really good at talking. She had very good, she understood, and she made herself understood when she was talking. But her grammar, oh my goodness, her grammar was just so bad. And I mean, even in present tense, I remember that she couldn't conjugate the verb to have in Spanish correctly sometimes. It wasn't all the time, but I remember. And we really struggled. And she didn't want to leave my class. And it was a point that I had to talk to her because her grammar was so poor and so limited. And I worked with her so much, and she was so persistent, but her grade was pretty. It was C, it was a D, it was a C, it was a D. Now, she participated. She raises her hand. She was able to communicate. But every time that she was writing, it was hurtful for me to see it. And she went to take the AP exam, and she got a 4. And she got a 4. And the moment that she got a 4, I felt like I did such a disservice to that kid. I am so glad that she was so relentless, and she was so, she had this determination. Otherwise, I would have destroyed her. And it was on me. And I still remember her, because that was the moment when I understood that a textbook cannot dictate my curriculum, that I have to understand better.
That is so important, Claudia, because I know that before I made my transition into integrating more comprehensible input in my classroom, before that, I would mainly, this was, 4 years ago. I was still a fairly new teacher then. And I wish I could write notes to all of my students and ask them to forgive me because I didn't know better. I would work mainly, I would teach all my students, but I would give most of my attention to the students I perceived as capable, when now I know all my students are capable. And yes, I mean, look at your student, the story you just shared.
And so then again, exactly. And then again, we were talking with Berta, and some of my students, I'm going to share an unit with you that it was about social media. So when we're talking about social media, of course, there are a lot of risks with social media, but there are a lot of advantages. And we see that the social movements that social media have caused, because now social media gives a voice to a lot of people that didn't have it before. And when we're talking about countries where they have limited free press, it is even more important. So we did a work in a unit about social media, not about the negative, but about the positive and how they can support social movement. And we use the subjunctive a lot because it was their opinion. It is important that, it is essential that, and we use it, and we use it in context. And we created an anchor chart with my AP students, and we put it on my walls, and we were already referring to that. And I explained it, and I taught them. So for me, I think that they're ready to have a brief explanation of grammar when they already understand the content, the words, when they understand what they're reading. And then I can point out, see, this is how they use it. This is what they use it. And that takes forever. And some kids pick it up faster than others. But that doesn't mean that the ones that don't pick are not going to be able to pass AP exams. I have until last year 100% passing rate. I think my average right now is 92%. I don't know what is going to happen this year. I'm not going to even worry about it.
I'm not even going to take into account this year.
I'm not going to even worry about it. But I don't spend units, classes with grammar. I do teach grammar explicitly when I feel they're ready, because they already understand the content and they can really kind of grasp that when it's not, I don't think I can do that yet. So let's look at this, Berta. What do you think about this? Is the intermediate about ACFAL, and again, this is the longest tip, because I think this is at the core of our intermediate classes, is understanding them. What is the level? So this is moving from novice to advanced.
Yes. So in the intermediate level, we have series of sentences and connected sentences. So we need to make sure our students are producing, or we need to be showing our students how that is produced. And then we also need to make sure that our topics that we select are for students to be able to talk about themselves and the immediate environment, which is we need to find themes that are important to them and that you as a teacher are also passionate. I believe as a teacher, I want to teach things that I'm passionate about, because if you don't want to teach about Cinco de Mayo, don't teach about Cinco de Mayo. If you don't want to teach about bullfighting, don't teach about bullfighting. Teach about the things that you are passionate about, because that's going to radiate from you when you're teaching, and that's what we should do as teachers.
I'm sending you a heart right now for that comment, because I agree so much in what you just said. I feel like our kids are sponges, and they don't only get our content, but our energy. And when we come with a topic that we feel really strong about it, the energy is transmitted to them. I agree, Berta.
And we can find that common ground between their interests and our interests, because I'm not saying we're going to be dictators and impose the themes that Berta Delgadillo wants to teach her class. Not at all. But at the beginning of the year, I have a survey that I do with my students, as I know you do too, Claudia, where you get to know your students and you ask them their favorite books, their favorite hobbies and whatnot. And from then I start looking for patterns. And then I decide to pull the topics that I think are going to be meaningful to my classes and that I am also going to be very happy to talk about. At this point, I also want to answer the question. Somebody asked, Laura del Moral asked, are there checkpoints you do, Berta, to see if they're moving? Absolutely. Everything I do in my class has a purpose. So the formative assessments that we do in the classroom, whether it's through a dry erase board, or whether it's through a quick write. I love quick writes.
Me too.
Because they tell me so much data about my students. How many words they can write in 15 minutes. How accurate is their writing. That tells me a great snapshot of where they're at as far as the proficiency range. And based on that, I can have conversations with my students. But before having those conversations and before doing those checkpoints, it is so important that we spend some time. I do this. Is one of the it's a best practice I got from Meredith White, and I talk to my students about proficiency intensively the first week of school.
Yeah,
because they need to know. They need to know where are they at right now, and where are they going.
Yeah. And so, they need to be intentional.
Exactly. It needs to happen intentionally. So we do a lot of activities. I have a whole week unit that I do with my students on proficiency so that they understand it very well. And I'm really proud of the examples they come up with. So because they are proficient at speaking about proficiency, when I do these checkpoints, like the quick writes or any formative assessment, when I do this, I'm able to have conversations with my students about, okay, so what types of sentences do you have in your quick write? Let's look at them. Can you, color code a simple sentence with this color? Can you color code a complex sentences with this color. So, or can you circle or highlight your transitional phrases, things of that nature, so that they can move up. And that also is going to address the question, can you give an example of how you would lead the advanced kids beyond intermediate low while you're leading others into intermediate low? I don't have to stop what I'm doing with my intermediate lows to be able to lead the advanced kids. It's all about they can use the same content, but because they are proficient at proficiency ranges and they know their goals, and usually the advanced kids want to go to their goals. For example, we did a class novel the prior to leaving school because of the pandemic, and they had to do, it was not a quick write. They had to the exam, their test was a writing assessment, writing output assessment. And I had, obviously, my lowest performers were writing maybe 100, 125 words, and my highest achievers, they were writing 2-3 pages. I mean, it was crazy how the high achievers always want to push themselves. So don't think in terms that, oh, I'm going to have to do something different for my high achievers. You're not going to have to do anything different if you direct their attention to their level. If you have a little mini conference with them and show them, take maybe 5-10 minutes to show them, okay, I noticed that you already passed this. You're able to do this, this, and this. So now we need to be targeting this level, and I want you to focus on this. So I'm telling the class, the intermediate low, how to write an intermediate low level, but the student knows what they need to do to write an intermediate mid-level.
Exactly.
I have a question. Does the survey mean that every year is different for you? I do have some units that I really am passionate about and that can be used for all students. And as a teacher, you know that there are some units that they may not express interest for, but every teacher has that one unit that you know your students, you can't wait to share it with your students because you know they're gonna love it, because they always do. So yes, I am the kind of teacher that does have somewhat of a different themes, different even within semesters, because I don't mind it. But and doesn't mean that you have to do that, but you can find common themes. You'll find patterns. They're teenagers. We're not going to assume they're all the same, because they're not, but they do share several things in common.
And I think when, I don't know if that happens to you, but when I left my textbook aside, and remember, I have to throw it away because otherwise it was going to drive me crazy, because I felt compelled to teach everything that was in the textbook. So I couldn't cure myself in any different way but throwing my textbook away. But also, what I love about CI, or having a different approach to CI, is that there are so many activities in CI where you can bring those interests in the student. Like, it's really, when you know what the students like, when you know what they're interested in, even your already made unit can be adjusted to meet those needs and to have those conversations with them. And I think that is what is really great about having that understanding, because I think when we understand, we can intentionally adjust to those kids and what they are interested in. So I think we have a couple of questions about the proficiency with that. I don't know you, but I teach the proficiency level, and the unit that I bought was, and I adjusted, it was by Miss Classes Locas, I think. And I bought a unit that she prepared with a game, understanding all the proficiency level. That's the one that I use, and I have been adjusting that for over the years. But Miss Classes Locas had a great unit about proficiency levels.
I created my own unit from different resources, and you know what, Katy Perry, I'm going to you gave me an idea for an excellent blog post, so I'm going to put it together, and when I'm ready this summer, I will share it, and I'll make sure I let you know through here that unit is ready for you to use, because I have one. It's not in a teacher friendly format. It's in a ready for Miss Delgadillo format, but it's not ready to be shared with other teachers format, if you know what I mean.
I hear you. I got it. I have all those resources ready in my drive too. Is they're ready for Señoras Elliot, but not for all the teachers. Um, this is a great conversation because I feel like when we look at this, and I'm gonna move this from Katie so we can see this slide better. Um, Kathy. So when we're talking about intermediate, we're talking about sentences and connected sentences. Uh, that mean that kids are not going to be writing in paragraphs? Of course, they are going to be. But some kids are going to be at this level, and that's a great level to be. They are creating, and mainly in intermediate level, they're going to get stronger at that present tense and start using those other tenses. I feel like sometimes we give them too much and we expect them too much, and then they get confused and they don't get good at anything. Like it's just too much for them to try to do. So let's remember, and if you look at AP, and I teach IB, so if when I look at my IB, nobody's saying that in order for them to get a 5, they need to be subjunctive or present perfect or conditional. They don't need to be. So we need to focus on what they have to do. And like Berta and Berta, I want you to share that because that's something that Berta taught to me a couple of weeks ago, and I felt like, oh my gosh, that's it. When we have an advanced law student, for many years, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a great job. And then I realized that no, it wasn't me. My only accomplishment was to have this kid to be independent enough for him to go outside my classroom, to start listening to shows in Netflix, to start listening in music in Spanish. And because of those additional exposures, he was advanced low. But my mind in the past would say, like, I can make it advanced lows with my 90 minutes of class. And I think that wasn't real. It's just make them at that level. Berta, I wanted really you to talk about it because when Berta mentioned that to me, like, oh my gosh, Berta, you are so right.
So we're talking about leading the students to what exactly was it that I told you, Claudia?
We were talking about, remember when we were talking about what is our goal? What is our goal in these intermediate classes? What should be and we're not talking about intermediate mid, intermediate high, advanced low, advanced mid. We're not talking about a proficiency level, but what would be our goal in terms of language for our students at the end of the 4 years or
Absolutely.
3 years of class?
We want to make sure we have high expectations for our students, as we should as teachers, but we want to make sure that those expectations are reasonable. Because what I was telling Claudia was in the terms of, I don't know about you, but every year during open house, when the parents come, if I could have money every time they said, oh, I took 4 years of Spanish. And we all know this because we all have heard it. Every world language teacher has heard this comment. And we don't want that to be our students in the future. We want us to, if our profession is going to flourish, and if we are going to continue to get more funding for our programs, and we're going to have a greater impact, we need to make sure that we're leading our students to being able to successfully use the language in real world settings, even at different levels. For example, a student who works at a grocery store can talk to a Hispanic customer, and the customer is going to be like, wow, you speak Spanish. Yes, that my teacher taught me. Just little transactions like that are applicable to the real world, honestly, give the students another boost and the willingness. Because I don't know about you, Claudia, but in my classroom, my students who are the higher achievers are the students who use the language for their own leisure at their own times. They intentionally make friends with Hispanic students. They watch TV shows in Spanish. They add all the songs I show them in the classroom. Yes. These are the students. They completely get immersed in the language, and I believe that we can motivate all of our students to be that committed to learn and to move up the levels, even though it's going to take time for all of them.
So we need to go back to this, because the point that we want to make here is that regardless of what is intermediate, mid, intermediate, high, acquisition is slow. It's really slow, and it takes so many hours to really acquire a language. And I can tell you, I did a master's here in the United States in my career as a lawyer, and I did a master's in American University for a year. I took law classes. I had to write so many papers in English, and it took me forever. I remember those days with like, oh my gosh, pain. And I've been living here for 16 years. And my husband is American, and I talk to him every day in English, and I talk to my kids in Spanish. And again, I make mistakes every single day. I make errors every single day. Every time that I write an email, I know that there are going to be 1 or 2 errors, and it's taking me forever. So when we see that in our kids, for me, it just brings me a lot of empathy. Like, I understand. And when we understand that it's a slow process, our connections with them are going to be deeper, because they are going to feel like we understand. And for many, many years, when I started teaching, I just had like this disappointing face. How in the world you don't know that word? Or how in the world you cannot conjugate that verb? Or how in the world you cannot say a word in Spanish? And I felt like that was so damaging. And since I am understanding more and more this process, I'm being much more empathetic, and I have been feeling really great about being vulnerable about my own limitations in English. And I feel like when we understand that, we can meet our learners. So our tip 1, of course, after all this discussion,
I'm laughing because every time I engage in conversation with Claudia and her group, we just,
oh my gosh,
we just extend and extend and extend. We could be talking about this forever.
And I'm trying to do my PowerPoint presentation, my slides here, but it's just kind of not going back. So our tip 1, look where I am. Oh my gosh.
Next.
If you can just go ahead and I will get there, Berta, if you help us with the tip 1.
Our tip 1 was to start by using comprehensible input, but not just any comprehensible input. Start delivering language to reach all your proficiency levels. So if you have a novice mid in your Spanish 2 class, make sure that the language you deliver is comprehensible even to that one student.
And that doesn't mean that you are not going to use the past tense. And that doesn't mean that you are going to be in your language just super basic. It means that you are going to have to be very intentional in providing comprehensible input to all of them.
It means that you're going to have to point and pause to a lot of words, maybe.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
That could be one way to make it comprehensible. It means that if you're going to give a reading to all your students, you can scan that reading and take 5 minutes to just put little bold, like put certain words in bold and give them the in bold font and give them the meaning of those words in a little box. Just little accommodations that honestly do not take a ton of time.
And I think this is when I get the question usually, like, how can you do that? And I agree with Berta. When you do it, you realize that it requires practice, but that you can do it. And it doesn't require for you to have 3 different preps or create additional resources. It just means that you are going to be very intentional of your speed, of the speech, that you are going to repeat, that you're going to pause more, that you're going to have more visuals, that you're going to have to do more pointing, that you may have to draw, that you may have to use L1 to make sure that you're establishing meaning. So it doesn't mean that your entire language is going to change. It doesn't mean that your entire resources or units have to be changed. It just means that you need to be aware that they need to understand, because if they don't understand the gap, that gap between your lower achiever and your higher achiever is only gonna grow. And it's just every time that we talk to our students and they're not understanding what we're saying, or they're not understanding what they're reading, is just noise. We are not really supporting their growth. That's why it is so imperative that we keep our speech comprehensible and our input comprehensible to them. So I know it sounds easier than it is. It takes a lot of intention. For me, it takes a lot of intention. But I think I'm getting to the point that I am more comfortable, and it gets easier, right, Berta?
It does get easier. It does get easier with practice.
Yes. So that was our number one. I know it was so long, but I think that's the biggest one. Our challenge number two. So our challenge number one is we have kids at so many different levels. And it's a reality. And no matter if you have, if they had an incredible teacher the year before, no matter if your department has a perfect vertically aligned curriculum, the fact is that the kids are going to be at different levels. That is a reality. And our tip is meet them at the level that they are and help them grow. Meet them at the level in L2. And I think we just need to stop a little bit and say that it is very important that we try to stay in L2 in our classes. We cannot say, okay, we're going to stay in L1 for the first month and then we're going to go to L2. I just tried that and it didn't work for me. So for me, it has worked since day one. I use L2 and I'm very intentional with my input to be comprehensible. So help them grow, understand where they are, and help them grow. So that's our tip number one. Challenge number two, output. Of course, and I know CI has been very strong about they need input, but we know that we want them to start outputting. They want to do that. But oh my gosh, it's so messy. Like, they start writing and say, I remember that they grow better in level one. Sometimes we compare and level one just seems so clean and error-free. And then when they come to level 2 or 3, like, oh, what are you saying? And then they just cannot say a word in L2. And you feel like, how am I going to do this? So the thing is, we need to go back to what we saw, and it's the proficiency levels. Intermediate level is messy. It is very messy because they are creating, and it is okay. It is messy. They have a lot of verbs already in their head. They know, and then they get confused with the O's and the E's and the endings and the subjects and the adjectives. So they have so much language at this point in their heads, and they're just trying to put it out. That we need to scaffold. Like, the tip number 2 that we have for this messiness in output is we need to scaffold. And I have several confessions to do here, because I didn't do this much for many years, because I thought that when I was providing those support for my student, I was kind of like, it was kind of cheating, that I really expect them to know all those words. I really thought that they could start the sentence without me helping them. I thought that they could connect sentences without me providing the appropriate connectors. I really thought that they could develop. I really thought they could. And then when I started understanding more and more, I just finally realized that, they are at that level. I love this image by Spanish Plan, because when one of the mistakes that I had, or one of the misunderstandings that I have for many, many years, is that when my students understood what I was telling them, they were able to produce it. And I thought that, oh, but I just introduced myself. I just talked about my weekend, and I did it for 3 times, and we read about it, and we wrote about it. And now I'm asking you to write about your weekend, and look at this. And you understood everything. How in the world you couldn't replicate what you just hear? And then when they start talking to me using the language, I just couldn't avoid but trying to correct them, because in my mind it's like, we just talked to class about my last weekend or my summer. How you cannot do narration in the past? We've been working for 2 weeks on this. And I always thought that because they understood, they could produce. I really didn't know. Because the truth is that they're not there. The truth is that they don't own the language yet. And when we expect them to produce and we don't provide the support, then is when a lot of the frustration is going to come. The kids are not going to find the words to say and to stay in L2. And when they cry, they're going to just don't be able to say anything because we don't provide the support. So there are so many support that we can provide for the kids at this level. So I love to do this. And this is an example. This is level 1, but I wanted to show you this because this is something that I started doing a couple of years ago, and it has been so successful in my class. So because I don't have a textbook, we create our vocab, and I have some of these words already intentionally, and we're talking about our schedule here. So we start writing I'm telling them I'm bringing a schedule from a Spanish-speaking country, probably my cousin. He sent me a schedule, and I'm putting it there, and I'm pointing, and I'm describing the schedule, and we're writing the words together. So this is work that we're doing together. And then we write a text. And this is a strategy that I learned from Mike Petto, that is write and discuss. So now we are writing about the schedule, and we are comparing a schedule from my cousin in Colombia to the schedule of a kid in Paxson. So I'm very intentional because, again, my kids at this point know proficiency and they know what we're trying to do. So we're trying to create simple sentences, but we're trying to connect, but we're trying to use this additional vocab. Now, this is my example. I don't expect them to do this by themselves, but I'm going to keep it there, and I'm going to ask them write 3 sentences about talk to your friend, and ask them 3 questions that I'm going to give them to talk about the schedule, and then write 3 sentences. And they have all these resources available to them, these anchor charts, these model text, for them to get ideas on how to start their paragraph or their little 3-sentence summary. I also use a lot of, this is the one that I mean, these are my posters. I have these posters all over my classroom because I want them to be able to access to this vocab when they're writing. And for many years, I expect them to memorize. Wasn't that crazy? I mean, like, how in the world I was expecting for them to memorize all this? But I thought that I was great. You know, like I gave it to you in a piece of paper. You have to memorize and use it. I don't use that anymore. And the difference is incredible because they have becoming more independent, because it's been a process. So again, remember our different level of students. We have intermediate low, we have intermediate mid, we have intermediate high. When you provide this, you're going to see the kid that is intermediate low or novice high, really depending on these charts. Like, you can see their eyes going back all the time, and they're going to use maybe 1 or 2, but of course they're not going to try to use more because they don't know how, and that's fine. But then the ones that are upper levels or high flyers are going to really use this and explode in their writing. And I think that's what it goes back to what Berta was saying about the quick writes. That is when you see the quick writes and you see the advanced low key writing 2 pages, because they have been really using all this support and now they're at that level. But yet your lower level is not sitting looking at the roof, because they also have something to say. So I think that scaffolding is so important. I'm really struggling with my my slides today, because see, that's why I love PowerPoint. It is just freezing because I'm using the same computer. So hang in there with me. It will come. Oh, great. I know I went to like slide 27, but do we have any questions, Berta, that we can address while I try to get our presentation in the right place?
Yes. Give me 1 second. Let me get back in there because I was addressing a question. So if you guys see me looking at the screen, it's because I'm actually answering questions and sharing some resources that people have asked about. So.
Okay, so let me finish with this while you bring the question. Oh, I have to bring it. So these are the so our challenge 2. So we have our challenge 1 is kids are at different levels. We need to meet them, help them grow. Meet them in L2 since the beginning and help them grow. So again, it is so important what we were talking with Berta, that if you're in level 2, we want to start with that novice high and then lead them to that intermediate. We cannot start the year with that intermediate low, because are the proficiency level that they need to meet at the end of the year. So that's our first tip. The second challenge is, of course, output. What can we do about output? We need to scaffold. We need to provide anchor charts. I do mine with my students, and mine don't look pretty. I do have some poster boards for transitional words, but I do anchor charts for all my grammar. So I sit down with them and we start building, and I have papers all over my classroom and I start putting them with tapes. It doesn't look pretty because that's not who I am. I'm not like the teacher who likes to do the poster board that is pretty and perfect, but it gets the job done and it serves us really well. So I create those anchor charts when I'm talking about that grammar with my students, and I'm going to leave them there. Yes, the verb is going to be conjugated. Yes, of course. And for many years I was like, oh no, and then I realized, oh no, because they may use it. Of course, Claudia, you want them to use it. Put it up. So I am putting up those anchor charts, sentence starters. Oh my God, they are amazing. How many times you have a student who said, how can I start my sentence? How can I start my sentence? Let's provide those.
They really have a hard time, especially when they are not on level. They have a hard time starting sentences. So by providing these charts, you are already eliminating, you're being a proactive instructor and you're eliminating that issue. Because they know, after you do your write and discuss that Claudia was talking about, number one, they have a mentor text, or they have a piece of writing that models what is expected from them. The students we know that we need to give clear expectations. That's just classroom management. So with that in mind, it's not only a good practice for delivering input, but it's also good classroom management practice. Students have a mentor test to look after, and they also have the anchor chart that you created with them, and they have language to pull from, so they're not just sitting there or being disruptive. They're not just sitting there wasting time or being disruptive. They're actually trying. What do you prefer to have? A student who's sitting there with a bad attitude because they feel stupid? I'm going to use the word because we can make our students feel that way if we're not careful. Or do you want to have a student who is sleeping Or do you want to give students the support that they need so that they can start creating with support? If you give them the
Yes.
things they need to create with support, if we give students what they need, they begin creating with support. And I'm going to tell you, so many times I have students who came to me with very weak language skills, and they were disruptive in my classroom. And I had to do my thing. I had to have a conversation with them. I had to call their parents, but I also had to show to that student, hey, your previous experience, I'm not your previous experience. I'm going to show you. And usually that student that comes to my classroom disruptive because they don't know me as a teacher, by the time they've taken their first assessment with me, because they've been able to produce, it's kind of like a difference between night and day. They're
Yes.
they're like, oh, I can learn from her, or she's going to give me the support that I need to produce. She
Yes.
sees
Totally.
something in me. So the anchor charts and scaffolds are super important.
Super important. And then I had a question that we had before, and it was about online translators. And I'm going to just say that, and then we're going to move because I know we are over time as always. But online translator, I can tell you, I cannot, my problems with online translators have reduced incredibly in my class. And I feel my students don't think that they need it, because every time that I ask them to output something, I give them so much that they can pull out from, that they don't think that they need that. And we are gonna be able to give those even in summative assessment to some extent. So again, when we provide those, first, the affective filter of our students are going to go down, and it is so important. And second, all of them, like Berta said, all of them are going to be are going to feel like they really can do something in your class, that they really can produce some sentences, that they really can say something, because you are giving them so much. So now, so we do our 2 challenges, 2 tips. Now let's go with our third one, and we're gonna try to keep this as short as we can. We're gonna say 2 things, because we have a surprise for you at the end, and we want you to stay until the end. And I know it's getting super late. So our challenge number 3 is, not only most textbooks are incomprehensible, but the curriculum is overloaded. So we need, we have talked about the textbooks before, but also our curriculum sometimes. So Berta has a great tip for that.
So what we need to do, if we are bound to utilize a mandated curriculum and we're bound to utilize the textbook in our classes, as it is the case for many people who want to teach with a more comprehensible input approach, we need to audit and curate our resources. It doesn't mean that we can't use the textbook, but we need to flip through our textbook, and just like I said earlier, determine the themes that are going to be of interest to your students. And if you have a textbook, you will also, the textbook is a great place for ideas, but it doesn't have to mandate what you do in the classroom. So look through it, look through the themes that are appealing, look at the pictures that are appealing. If the pictures are not appealing, well, go research some more pictures, and maybe do the same activity with new pictures that represent all cultures and that represent your class in every way. If there are activities that are, sometimes textbooks have really good ideas for interpersonal activities. I'm not saying textbooks, I'm not bashing the textbooks, but they are loaded with a lot of vocabulary, and they are overwhelming to the students at the beginning.
And to us, because then we feel like we need to teach them all.
Thankfully, I want to say, and I'm going to, turn it back over to Claudia. 3 years ago, we stopped using our textbook, and my administration is very supportive of what I do because they've seen results in our classes. So they don't really come and tell me anything, because I use teaching thematic units and I integrate a lot of CI, although I will say that yes, CI is an important ingredient in my class, but I also use other approaches as well in the classroom. And because I do thematic units, I mean, that's worked for me wonderfully with use integrating other approaches and making sure I integrate a lot of CI in there. Um, but Claudia does have a vertically aligned curriculum, I believe, right, Claudia? Because you teach IB.
So I teach IB, and I'm really I teach two of the levels of IB, and I want so what I have done, as I told you before, I don't use a textbook. I use the same as Berta. My administration has been super supportive of me because my students really do well in the end of core exam, and my kids, tend to want to be in my class. So because of the success that my classes have had, they let me do. They're like, okay, just keep doing it. But every time that I'm talking about, because I have to create my own resources, because I am developing my own units, I have to create a system. And my system has been always start with an oral CI. So I'm going to present the topic, and I'm going to be super intentional. I'm going to really think about some vocab that I want to target. Is going to be advanced vocab for my upper levels. And of course, I'm going to have to use some grammar structures. And those grammar structures are going to be naturally for my task. But I'm going to make sure that even if they haven't, they're not going to know those structures, but I'm going to make them comprehensible to them, even if I have to write it in English and Spanish on my board. And that's fine. And I don't see any problem with that. And I will write it on the board, and I will have a lot of visual. Like I think Tracy mentioned the importance of visual. I use tons of visuals, and I'm going to bring it. I'm going to deliver CI. I'm going to make it super comprehensible to them. And then I'm going to check for comprehension. And we create a text together. And that's going to be our scaffold. We have an anchor chart. We're writing our vocab. We're writing our main grammar structures. And then together, my classes and I are creating a text. And then after we do that, I present my authentic resource. Oh my gosh, it has changed the life in my class for my students and for me. It's not like I don't have a clue of what they're saying, because I don't know, have you had experience with the audios? The audios for AP, the audios for level 3 are so difficult. And my kids were like totally out, like they were super disengaged. But now that I follow this structure and this framework, it really has helped me and helped them. And now they are so excited. They just cannot believe how much they're able to understand. So after I expose them to that text, we work, we check for understanding, we really discuss it, we connect it with their life. And finally, I have my output. And finally, after all this input, because we need to remember that in the intermediate level, they are not independent yet. They really are gonna depend on a lot of what you do. Now, a lot of teachers saying that, oh my gosh, you're on all the time. That's part of my personality, and I'm on all the time. But when I provide my first number one delivered CI, that's my big day. That is the day that I give it all. But my second day, I'm back. They're telling me what they remember, and I'm writing. And the third day, we're reading. So the only day that I give like all my heart and energy is my first day. And again, I have to engage them. I have to love my topic. So that is the day that I'm giving it all. That is the day that I come home and I'm super exhausted because I gave it all. And with a lot of scaffolding, then the output. And I am very proud of how much they have grown in my class, and especially the fact that I have had very few students that have given up on me. I feel like this framework really support every single one of your students. You high flyers are going to feel challenged every time, and then your kids are in the lower range are going to feel engaged, and they're going to feel like Berta said, they're going to know that I will get them. And I say, I got you. I got you. Don't just trust me. I got you. So let's go. So this is the framework that I have using in the last couple of years in my class, and it has been very successful to help them and to help me like getting away from my textbook. So 3 challenges, right, Berta? Challenge number 1, different levels. Tip, meet them at the level. Challenge number 2, output is so messy. Provide scaffold, sentence starters, anchor charts, transitional words. Just help them, support them, and they will be with you. And number 3, let's look at those textbooks. Let's audit those textbooks. Let's curate those textbooks. Let's focus on the essential and grow with them. We don't feel compelled to use them all, to like go all over that grammar. Now, it takes practice. It hasn't been easy, huh, Berta?
It hasn't been easy. It's require a lot of reading of just second language acquisition textbooks, blogs, and I'm gonna tell you something. It's different when we're reading a blog and we want to try a super cool activity. I'm all up for that. I'm not discouraging you from doing that. I've done that. I still do that through this day. I love reading what my colleagues have to say. But I think when I shifted from just reading blogs to actually reading some of the textbooks from different authors and ACTFL, it really shifted my thinking. And ultimately, I want to be able to come up with activities for my students, personalized activities that I create for them, because that way they're more engaged and I'm able to reach them all there. But when we start doing that, it's difficult at the beginning because there's a lot of reading that needs to happen, a lot of PD, kind of like this one. And every right now we're so blessed that we have a lot of free professional development thanks to the wonders of social media and the internet. So we need to do all of that. And Claudia and I have spent numerous hours doing, educating ourselves on several topics and trying and fixing and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And we want to help you. So we had a lot of people ask us, how do we do certain things because of the stuff we share on social media? How do you do this? How do you get to your students to talk like this? Or I have met your students and they're wonderful or whatever. How do you get them to talk like this? And so we have invested a lot of hours putting our heads together and identifying challenges like the ones we talked about today and what we have done to solve those challenges in our classroom. So we have created a course that we want to share with you today. So Claudia, if you can talk about I'm actually going to talk about our vision for the course. So we are going to give you, again, a clearer picture, even more clear than what we covered in here, of what the students are at their proficiency and how you can truly understand and connect with them. So what I was talking about in tip number 1, we're going to go in depth in the course about how to understand where a student should be, whether it's like from novice high all the way to advanced low, and how to have those conversations with them so that they can move up on the levels in our intermediate classes. And then we're also going to give you actionable strategies and ideas, such as the ideas that Claudia presented. And when she was talking about scaffold, we're going to actually tell you why these ideas work from what we have read on our books that we have read on second language acquisition. So it's kind of like a shortcut. We're going to share what we have read and how we have connected and how we have made that happen in our classroom, and why we use it and why it works. So that we can help our students grow and shine. And the third thing that we are going to be discussing on our course, it's what was the third thing, Claudia?
I'm struggling more than.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I do remember what it was. It's scaffolding, because if you have to align your curriculum, what is it that you can do? What process should you look at to align your curriculum to be able to provide students and meet the needs of your student, but at the same time keep your job because you are teaching the textbook. So if these are your challenges, we have some proposed solutions, and I'm going to let Claudia talk about that.
So if you are so of course, I think it's like our kids, we all are at different levels. But if you are at a level where you're really having these challenges in your class and you really don't know how to tackle those, or if you're really thinking to revamp those intermediate courses, maybe this is a good choice for you. I don't think it's for everybody because some of you may already be very advanced in this process. But if you still struggle with students come at different levels, if you really struggle with having to keep your classes in L2,
Claudia, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you click on that little four corner thing under slide 30? Can you click on it? No, that no, that one. See what it does. Hopefully it doesn't do anything crazy. Yeah. Nope. Nothing happened. Okay. It's just that this bar is definitely covering up the whole screen.
I know it is terrible, and I don't know how to fix it right now.
And it's never done that before because we have shown screen.
It is just, I think this today, I don't know, since yesterday, my internet is really struggling. So I don't know if that is part of, but let me, we can just see if I can bring it up here in a different way. And then I'm going to keep talking while I try to bring it in a different way. Maybe that will help. But anyway, so if you're struggling with keeping your students in L2, if you are struggling with keeping output, that output that is so messy, if you have a current curriculum and that curriculum is overwhelming for you, we have created this course, and this course is going to have 4 modules. And in the first module, you are going to dive in understanding the learner, in understanding that intermediate level. And so you have the resources to really connect with them and help them grow. We are going to have our second module is going to be all about keeping you comprehensible, even if you're using complex tests. So you are going to be using authentic resources in articles or audio, but we're going to give you actionable tips so you're going to keep those resources comprehensible to your students. Module 3 is all about output. It's presentational and interpersonal. How can you create that output and provide all the scaffolding that we're mentioning? And also, we are going to talk about assessment, and we're going to talk about formative assessment, summative assessment, and in-demand assessment. So we are going to help you have like the whole picture of your intermediate levels. So this is our dream. We're really working super hard in this course because we feel compelled, like we really feel compelled to have strong intermediate level classes so the programs can truly grow. Because one of the objectives, of course, is that the students have language, but we know that we do more than language. We do open-mindedness. We help our students to take risks. We help our students understand different points of view. So our goal with Berta is not only that your language gets stronger and your classes get stronger, but because of that, your programs will get stronger, so more kids will feel compelled to go to that level 3.
We're not promising to give you a quick fix, because this is not a quick fix, but we're going to share with you things that we have tried in our classroom that are now part of everyday practice that assist us in keeping the students in the target language and keeping ourselves in the target language, because sometimes that's even a challenge, and how we can meet the needs of all students through making sure that they are aware of what proficiency is and what they need to do to take charge of their own learning. Because even when they leave your class and there are no more Spanish courses, guess what? If they know what they need to do to get to the next level, they're going to do it. And I have a student who did that. He went to college and he only took Spanish 3. No, he took Spanish 1, 2, and 3. And he went to college and he came back one day. He volunteered. He came to see me and my colleague, Miss Gomez, who's actually watching. So hi, Maribel. So he came to see us and he said, "Señoritas, I want to do a presentation for your classes about how I learned more Spanish after I left the school and how I am now proficient." And he came. Imagine the students. I teach at a school that is mainly my students are African American, and about 20% of them are Hispanic. So this student came and
Incredible.
he spoke to his,
Yeah.
this was not somebody, even though I totally am pro use videos of I used to use videos, and I will still continue to use videos of Kobe Bryant talking in Spanish, Italian, and everything. Rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. But that is powerful to them to see that representation. So this student, out of his own will, came back to visit me and Miss Gomez, and out of his own will, he didn't ask me, hey, what are you doing in class? Can I do this? He's like, I brought a presentation about how to learn a second language beyond high school, and I want to present it to your class.
Yeah.
It didn't matter we were taking a test. It did not matter if they were, what I was doing that day. I was like, by all means, take the lead, because they're going to listen. So it was really awesome to have that student there, because he knew what it meant to go to his next level of proficiency. He took that knowledge, and because he had that willingness beyond core courses, he went and achieved that.
It
So
is true. And I think when I receive the notes, my students say, thank you for the Spanish that I learned, but thank you for the life lessons that I learned in your class. And I think when we go to upper levels and we talk about immigration and we talk about injustice and we talk about those topics, upper level topics, we're bringing great conversation that our students need to have. And the more students that we are able to get in those courses, the better. I mean, our programs are going to get so strong. And it is so sad to hear every time that they close a world language program, because it just breaks my heart, because I think it's an opportunity that we are taking away from our kids. And then when you are in a school where you have big minorities, or when they have high levels of poverty, we need to bring those classes, but we need to make it accessible to them. And talking about the subjunctive and the imperfect, yeah, it is great, but that's not at the core of our classes. So we want to offer this, and of course my presentation is not working anymore. It's everything freezes, so I'm not going to stop worrying about it, because what can we do, right? That's being live. That's what happened when you're live. But we want to invite you. This is going to be a really close invitation, because this is a course that Berta and I have been working, but it's our first course this big together, that we have invested our hearts and our minds, and we want to invite you. So I'm going to put in the comments a link if you want to be part of this founding member course. And you are going to be our first members in this course, and you're going to be able to access our 4 modules. We're going to have 2 Zoom live sessions with you, just to tackle your specific questions about your struggles and your challenges, and how you can tailor-make all this information to you. We're going to provide you rubrics, wow, with self-assessment part, which I think we want to put the work, especially in our intermediate learners, understanding their proficiency and self-assess. So the work is going to be on them, and the reflection, because sometimes we reflect for them. And I think it has to be a self-reflection, and they need
you
to,
totally nailed that statement. Yes,
right?
I heard. I was listening to a podcast. I think you recommended, Claudia, the other day, and I heard the term helicopter teacher. Now, we heard about helicopter parents, but we have to be careful that we are not the helicopter teachers trying to do everything for our students and not letting them grow inside our classrooms. And sometimes when we self-assess for them, that's not helping them.
Exactly. And I think we need to provide that support, but that support doesn't mean that we do all the work. So we're going to provide you rubrics, self-assessment, and I am going to share with you, and for my founding members, an entire unit for intermediate learners about graffiti. So again, it's going to be special because you're going to be founding members, and it's going to be a close invitation. So Berta, I don't know if you have the link to put it in the comments in the Facebook, and because I cannot do 3 things at the same time. So it's just kind of like really not that techy. So if you are interested in this and want more information about this course, Berta is going to put a link for you, and this is going to be only for our community. So we're talking only for Berta's community and my community, because we want to grow with you. We want to hear your feedback. We want to make an even better course with your help and with your input. So I know there has been so much. This is such a, I mean, you can talk about intermediate learners like forever. I mean, this is,
Absolutely. Especially every time I talk to Claudia, we're like on Zoom for 3 hours just talking. We're supposed to be getting work done, but we're just talking, and it is so great to connect on these topics.
yes, and as Berta said, this is a mindset shift, and it has been for me. And I have to keep myself check all the time because I tend sometimes to go back. So the fact that we are going to have this group and this course is going to help us to really dig deeper in our mindsets. There is not a magic pill. There is nothing that we can solve with one activity, one unit. I can say this is a great unit that I did a graffiti, and you can use it. But the challenges are deeper than that. And I think what we need to do is really have a great understanding and move on, because then you're going to be intentional. And like Berta said, and we agree with Berta, I think the blog posts are amazing. The resources already made are incredible and such a great help. But only when you really understand the why behind all those is when your practice like explodes. And it has for me, I have had the last 5 years have been incredible. And it's not like I haven't had my challenges, because I have, and I have classes that have been harder than others, with the connection is not there, that they keep challenging me to find different ways. And that's why I love this community, because this is where I come, I connect with incredible educators, and I get more ideas. So if you are interested in this class, just sign in. It's a wait list. We're gonna our date is going to be the last week of June, and we're going to have pre-recorded lessons. We're going to have some PDF to help you go through the course, and then we're going to have live lessons with you.
Very important. If you decide to sign up for the waiting list, we're going to give you information on when this course is going to start, because we're not going to start it until we want teachers to have a little bit of a break before, I mean, you do need to rest. But we will let you know at the end of June when we start kicking off the course. And like Claudia said, we're going to have, I believe, 2 Zoom sessions, right?
Yeah.
As you're going through the course, to support your questions and make sure that you answer your questions. So this is going to be a small group, because it's only open to, like I said, Claudia's community and my community. So if you are interested, please sign up. I have given you guys, I put the link in the comments, and I know Claudia, when she reposts this video, she's going to put the link with the post of this video.
Yes, so I will repost that, and if you cannot find the link, just send me a message and I will send it to you. It was so great to have you here today, and I'm so excited about this. Berta, thank you. You know how much I love working with you. It's just been a blessing to me to be able
Likewise,
to.
Claudia.
It's just great energy, great inspiration, great work, and the people that benefit the most is the people that are the most important, our students. So thank you so much. Gracias, muchas gracias a todos por estar con nosotros on a Saturday. I will repost this for everybody, and post the link with, if you want to join our wait list. Okay, so bye.
Ciao.